Some people love them.
They're beautiful and amazing.
They're one of the coolest things in the ocean.
Some people fear them.
Terrifying. Absolutely terrifying.
But one thing is for certain. Sharks have long captured the imagination of people around the world. Decades of negative media coverage, focused primarily on shark attacks, have given the animals a bad reputation. But a growing understanding of their vital role in the ecosystem, combined with a new focus on safe encounters, have begun to change their image.
We've gone through this really big shift. I need to get rid of the sharks, do I need to save the sharks?
Despite increased protections of sharks, many populations are still threatened. And some experts say it's not just commercial exploitation that is having an impact.
Recreational fishing can sometimes go under the radar because it's thought as really small scale and negligible because it's just one person with a rod and one hook, as compared to commercial fishing where a single boat can have thousands of hooks. But if you have millions of people with one hook, you can still have a big impact.
Shark fishing from beaches, piers, and bridges is an increasingly popular activity in parts of the United States. And scientists are finding that despite good intentions, catch and release doesn't guarantee the fish survives.
If the sharks are actually dying after release, we may be looking at a bigger impact than the commercial fisheries on shark populations in the United States.
To learn more, scientists in Florida are working closely with recreational anglers.
First thing we have in mind is the safety of the animal we're catching. It's a sport for us. That sport is not complete unless we have the safe release of the animal.
Most anglers care about sharks just as much as marine scientists, just in maybe a slightly different way. But all of us have to work together in order to save these animals.
What impact does land-based fishing have on Florida's shark populations? And how are scientists and anglers working together to protect these awe-inspiring animals from extinction?